a long day for us, and I know it's really good, but I think we can claim that the topic that we're going to be talking about this afternoon is kind of central to a lot of the stuff we're talking about, and I think there's quite a lot of interest in what batteries are. I've got to just say, for the first time, when I used to present science television, and you can see a beam engine, or an engine with loads of smoke coming out of it, or something that would later noise, and it's a really easy thing to get excited about. And then you look at a battery, and it's just a box that does nothing. And it's quite hard to communicate the importance and the critical changes that it represents. So but we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of it. And I'm joined with a really amazing panel of people. So right next to me is Dr. Ewan McTurk, who is a consultant battery electrochemist and runs Plug Live Television, and has become basically a sort of a spirit figure for us. We're constantly asking Ewan questions. The poor man is deluged with questions about batteries, and I always refer to, I don't know, just ask Ewan. I can't remember. Next to Ewan is Rory McNulty, and again, this is he's a senior analyst at Benchmark Mineral Intelligence, who are an extraordinary organisation who actually know how much minerals and materials there are in the world, and possibly don't just mention on Twitter, we're going to run out of lithium, or make up some other ridiculous claim. So we'll get into that, the materials. And then at the far end of the panel is William Tope, who's Chief Executive of Lena Energy. And I'll start with you, William, if you don't mind. What does Lena Energy do?
Yeah, so I represent the technology side of this equation, and Lena Energy is a company that are making batteries out of sodium instead of lithium. Slightly differently to some others, we're using a proven chemistry back from the 1980s, but we're modernizing it because no one did anything since 1980. So that ultimately, to bring the cost down, I think we can talk about where do we need new chemistries, why do we need new chemistries, all good discussion points, and hopefully I can provide some insight from the innovation side.
Right, but then can I just quickly clarify for someone who's not brilliant at understanding the different names for chemicals, but sodium, there's a more common name for it.
Yeah, so we quite literally use salt as a cathode material, and then secondly, something that may come up, we use a solid state instead of a liquid electrolyte. So that's another thing you can use to get more performance out of things like salt.
Right. Just the notion of a salt battery is fascinating for people who are outside battery chemistry knowledge is extraordinary. So Rory, can I ask you, because that's one of the first questions here, is what are the benefits of sodium-ion batteries? What's the difference between that and what we're all more familiar with, lithium-ion?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I guess sodium-ion batteries, to answer that question, we have to describe what lithium-ion batteries, and I think when you look at lithium-ion batteries, tackling that and achieving that as one of the first chemistries, we've really hit a pretty fantastic technology. It's the third end on the periodic table. When it comes to energy density, when it comes to performance, it's really quite difficult to beat. When you look at sodium-ion batteries, it's further down the periodic table, it's heavier, it's larger. There's certain inefficiencies when compared to the lithium-ion battery, but really, sodium itself is much more abundant universally, and there are a whole host of benefits that can be achieved through using sodium as a raw material and as a technology itself. So really what we're doing with next generation chemistries broadly is widening the toolkit that we have available to us, taking the lithium-ion batteries that have very high energy density and high performance use cases, and then widening that to chemistries like sodium, where you can optimize costs, you can optimize supply chain, optimize availability, and yes, there may be some performance that you have to drop in order to do that, but what you can achieve through broadening that horizon of chemistries is enabling a whole range of technology and applications across the world.
And then, can I ask you, there are so many, we mentioned just before then, we're talking, constantly I'm getting stories about these batteries could change the world. And then it's now gone into kind of mainstream press. It used to be in the sort of the nerdy electric vehicle press that I would be aware of, but it's now gone into, daily newspapers might say something, this new battery, and it's always this new battery design could be a game changer. But can you explain to us what the chemistries that we would now find in EV batteries, are they likely to develop or converge or change into batteries that we can use for other reasons?
So I mean, we already do use conventional lithium-ion batteries for different purposes. So up until recently, your EV batteries were all NMC, so that's lithium, nickel, manganese, cobalt, oxide. And then there'd be 3 numbers after NMC, like 111. And that would be 1 part nickel, 1 part manganese, 1 part cobalt. But we're trying to eliminate cobalt. So what we've now gone to is the likes of NMC 622, 6 parts nickel, 2 parts manganese, 2 parts cobalt. So you reduce the cobalt. We're now up to about NMC 811. And now we're starting to see the move towards lithium iron phosphate, quite considerable move towards lithium iron phosphate in electric vehicles, which is no parts nickel, no parts cobalt. It's basically iron and plus it's just rust and fertilizer that you have to make a lithium iron phosphate battery. And that's been used for a long time in static energy storage. That's the gold standard for static energy storage. The Will's now rubbing his hands and going, I'm going to have some of that market. And rightly so. But when it comes to the kind of divergence of chemistries, we're already seeing a divergence in the automotive sector. We've now got LFP versus NMC. We'll soon see sodium ion coming in there as well. When it comes to who gets to talk about sodium ion, all 3 of us were like, oh, because it really is so exciting. Will's version of sodium ion is very different, it's very novel, but I won't steal your thunder on that one. It's very cool. But what we're seeing as well is that lithium iron phosphate, so it's not quite as energy dense, you don't get quite as much range out of the standard range Tesla Model 3, which is your long range. The long range one has NMC, the standard range one has LFP. But one of the most interesting developments at the moment is that we're going to add some manganese into lithium iron phosphate. And that means that it not only boosts the voltage of the cell, and because of the energy contained is the capacity in ampere hours multiplied by the voltage, you've boosted the overall range that the vehicle can achieve to pretty close to NMC. And you've also reduced the cost of the battery, because by upping the voltage, you need less capacity, less physical material to achieve the same energy. So you actually need less stuff to get more range. That's exciting. That's going to be coming pretty soon. There's some manufacturers who've got that on the horizon.
I mean, that's certainly a critically important question is, am I going to see in my lifetime a smaller, lighter battery that has the same kind of energy capacity as the bigger, heavier batteries we're seeing now? Is that the journey we're on, and are we moving on that journey?
Oh, we are, and there's a whole bunch of different chemistries that are vying over that. So I've mentioned NFP. There's also silicon anodes. So you're removing the graphite, the carbon that's in a conventional lithium-ion cell. You're replacing it with silicon. Now, one silicon atom can store 4 lithium atoms in an anode negative electron, whereas you need 6 carbon atoms in graphite to store 1 lithium. So it's about 10 times as energy dense. However, once you add in the rest of the cell around it, it takes it down to a mere doubling of range. And that's gravimetric and volumetric, in other words, the amount of volume, the amount of weight, energy density. So it becomes lighter, it becomes longer range. I believe Mercedes are going to be one of the first to market. They say they're going to have silicon anodes in the Mercedes EQG, kind of like a Unimog off-roading looking thing, this year. I don't know if there's any updates on that thing myself latest, but allegedly they're aiming for 2024, so that's going to be a thing. But there's also other versions of sodium. So obviously, we'll say everything about Lena in a minute, but there's the likes of Tysan Energy, which is another UK innovation, where it's a sort of semi-solid state sodium metal cell, probably more akin to a conventional sodium-ion cell than what you're doing, but that comes very, very close, if not greater than the energy density of NMC. So there's all these totally different chemistries that have reached the same achievement, and it's all going to come down to cost, availability of material, ethics, safety, etc., as to which ones are going to win out. And to be honest, as we're seeing electrification taking off, not just in EVs but static energy storage and so on, I think in some cases it's going to be a case of who's got cells that I can buy to put in my product. Yeah. So we are going to see that diversification, and it's a very exciting time to be in this sector.
Yeah. I just want to remind everyone that there are 2 microphones at the front of there. I can't got the words to describe them. So if you want to ask a question in a bit, do please stand up and we'll see what we can do. I'd like to I would like to learn a bit more, William, about what you're up to and what benefits there are from your technology. Let's say from existing lithium-ion, the Tesla Megapack world that we might know about.
Yeah, and that's an important clarification. So we are focused on the stationary storage market. And in everything we just said, if you were to categorize, we have lithium today, which you can buy, it works, 10-year warranty, straight off the shelf. There's a big existential question, which is, do we ever need something other than lithium? And what I would tend to say is that for the majority of this audience, the majority of us who already are on the train, who love electrification, probably not, to be frank. Lithium will continue to be the workhorse for a large part of the industry for the next, for quite a long time. But there's large sectors outside of us that cannot access energy storage today, and it typically comes down to two reasons. One is the economics. Even though the price is coming way down, there are many use cases where the economics just don't work. Lithium is fundamentally still too expensive. And then the second is there are use cases where lithium ion is adequate, where its performance doesn't meet the task at hand. A lot of sectors in industry or a lot of geographical locations where it becomes far more expensive to deploy. And so the perfect use case, which kind of personifies how we've commercialized and how we've got to the point of deploying pilot systems, is a rooftop in Mumbai. So you've got a huge amount of solar. You don't need to do all the bells and whistles. You don't need to fast charge that battery, but you do want to store, say, 6 hours of it in the middle of the day, so you can give it back to the grid, even in 40 degrees, 50 degrees heat summer, and avoid turning up coal, which is what India does today. So we're really focused on bringing the cost destructively low by focusing on doing one thing well, and that's storing longer durations of energy storage really, really cheaply in a really robust and safe manner.
So for instance, for you to create I'll just pick something out random, a 50 kilowatt hour battery, you could produce that cheaper than a 50 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery.
Spot on, at about half the price, but the catch being, we can't do fast charging. We've actively foregone some of the bells and whistles of lithium because we think there's a huge market out there that does need long durations of storage to stabilize the grid. And you can do it by focusing on one thing really well and using a platform like we have at Linga. You have a real opportunity to fast track a new chemistry to market. I'm a bit of a cynic when it comes to all these stories popping out with the next game-changing battery. I can't characterize them all as God batteries. And this view that something's going to come to market and replace all lithium out there is quite frankly unrealistic. And maybe we can touch on that later, but it's a bit of an arduous journey going from that news article to actually bringing something to market. We span out of Lancaster University in 2017. Right, and we're just now getting our first systems out there. So sorry to be a pessimist, but it does take quite a journey to go from the sexy, hey, I've done something novel for the first time, and almost in an academic sense, I can get published, to I've built a business.
Yeah. I mean, that's I don't know if some of you may have remember seeing the episode, we shot an episode at the Oxford Physics Department where they were doing a lot of battery research. It was an absolutely fascinating day there. And I loved the Scottish professor, I think you got
Professor Peter Bruce, my
Peter
supervisor.
Bruce, yes, loved such a lovely guy. He did say, well, look, we did develop one, they make watch batteries to test them out, and that's how they produce them. And so there's a little watch battery, and he said we have managed to get one that is about 10 times the energy density of existing lithium ion at that time. And I said, oh, can we see that? He said, well, that's where it was. And he pointed to a burn mark on the bench where it had exploded. So, which is why they make them quite small, so that when they explode. So, you know, it was clearly, and that was probably 10 plus years ago, I saw that. And even in that time, things have developed, but not as they're often, you know, as people often claim that this is the miracle one. Rory, what about, I mean, are there limitations in the supply for sodium-ion batteries? I mean, is the fact that it's sodium makes it much easier to get the materials?
Definitely. So we'll touch a little bit on cost and the cost of sodium-ion batteries, and really that discussion of whether sodium is cheaper than lithium-ion batteries broadly has been a big topic in both the lithium-ion battery industry for fear of sodium coming and taking market share, and in the emerging sodium-ion industry, as that's a key talking point and opportunity for this as an emerging brand. Now, there's a great graphic that Benchmark normally posts that shows the capacity of lithium-ion batteries over the last 10 to 15 years, ramping up from low megawatt hours to more than a terawatt hour of batteries produced every year now, and how that's affected the lithium-ion battery price. Now, battery costs falling from hundreds of kilowatt hours for a cell to today, for some LFP batteries in China, what we're hearing is below $50 a kilowatt hour. Really significant price decreases, and in this cost environment, it makes it difficult for any new technology to compete on cost. Now, one of the key benefits of sodium-ion batteries is those raw materials should be significantly cheaper, and as the industry matures, manufacturing enables that same cost optimization. We should see a world where sodium-ion batteries have really quite significant cost benefits compared to lithium. But in today's world, with any new technology, cost is going to be a really significant driver of that early adoption. And it's difficult to see a world where any new technology competes with lithium-ion batteries on cost when there's that sheer scale of the industry.
Yeah. I mean, can you, I don't know if you know the exact figures, but a ballpark figure of what a lithium-ion battery costs per kilowatt hour to manufacture, say, in 2012? So I remember seeing, I mean, it's a massive drop in cost, isn't it, in that time?
Yeah, so 2012 was a bit further back than my brain can go. I say 2015, it was over 200 watt hours, over $200 a kilo, you're probably closer to $250, $300 per kilowatt hour. Sorry.
Right.
So that's it's been about a 20% optimization in cost per year from 2015 to 2021, 2022.
Yeah.
I was just going to say as well, when it comes to bringing new technologies, I think one of the reasons it's so important to specify exactly what you're doing and what your niche market. Why that's important is we talk a lot about sell prices. I spent all week long looking at the same charts you do, and everything's based on sell prices or pack prices.
Yeah.
You know, where we are in stationary storage, it's just as important to look at the balance of plant when you're spending a ton of money on liquid cooling for lithium-ion systems. Can you take hatchet to that side of the equation as well is really important. And then the other side is less so for EVs, where really range is everything, but the longevity of the battery is key, right? So another challenge I think a lot of new technologies will face is if you're coming into the market with say 2,000 cycles, even if you're half the price, you're going to have to replace it 5 times as much as LFP right now.
Right.
So we need to levelize everything down to ultimately what's the cost to store a megawatt hour.
Yes. And I mean, that is a very key part of it. I mean, in terms of the batteries you're producing now, do you know what the cycles are? And how do you find out what the cycles are? You've got to keep charging it this day. It takes quite a long time.
Yeah, it's a great point. Especially as these assets are designed to work for over 10 years. So
Right.
when you actually do it, there's a couple of ways you can test it, not to get too techy on it. But typically what we'll do is you'll charge it, discharge it, do a capacity check every 10 cycles to get exactly how much capacity is left in it, and do it again and again and again. And then linearize your degradation against some known analog for that type of chemistry. So you're often linearizing and predicting what the cycle life will be. Another challenge for a novel technology. And my company hasn't existed for 10 years, so you're trying to commercialize a product with a warranty for 10 years, that can be a challenge. And then the other things you can then do is something called accelerated degradation, so you hit the batteries much harder with higher C rates, you get that cycle time down, so you can do more and more cycles, and you just measure can the battery hold up under those conditions over a period of months and years.
And I mean, in terms of safety, is there a difference between lithium-ion and sodium-ion in terms of, you know, is it safe?
Massively, yeah. There's a significant difference in safety. But to put it in perspective, your NMC cells, which are considerably safer than a tank of combustible fuel in a petrol car, where if you hit that the wrong way, you're in a fireball.
Yeah.
But if you are stupid enough to drill through an NMC cell, then it's going to go off like firework. But you need to do something really stupid like that for that to happen.
Right.
Lithium iron phosphate, a cheaply made one, will then pop gas but won't catch fire. A well-made one, like BYD Lake Cell, kind of just takes the metal drilled out itself and goes, don't do that again. And it doesn't even get that warm, it's not really any gas coming out that will fire. Sodium ions, it looks as if it's inert, it looks as if it shouldn't actually be capable of storing any energy because you've done something spectacular to an electrical device that should just discharge it like that and fireball, but no, it's yeah. And in fairness, with advances in the likes of solid-state battery technologies, I've seen some that have polymer electrolytes, so kind of like a plasticky electrolyte. And this is using NMC, which is meant to be one of the more kind of combustible cathode positive electrode materials. And I've seen people put nails through those, but because it's not a combustible liquid, say electrolyte, you've taken this high energy density fireball and rendered it inert. But yeah, sodium technologies generally are very, very fire safe as well.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that before we run out, that if anyone's got any questions, to get in front of the microphone, because otherwise we're going to run out. Well, we do have someone now running up. Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. A question about degradation. What is it? What's the chemistry behind it? And it links in with how many times they can cycle. And by the way, LFP for the win.
Right. That's a good question. Who wants to deal with degradation?
I've explained how we test it, but maybe you want to describe what's actually happening.
What actually
How it
happens,
changes
yeah.
from
Yeah.
chemistry to chemistry, whether it's side reactions, etc.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different degradation mechanisms that happen. So in terms of trying to summarize that, there's a few different things that can happen. So for example, if you leave your phone or laptop or even a particularly badly designed electric car battery, NMC, not LFP for reasons I won't bore you with for now, fully charged for too long, it's going to start degrading very slowly because the overall cell voltage is the potential difference, in other words, the difference in potential between the positive and the negative electrode. And as you're charging it, the positive electrode gets more positive, the negative electrode tends towards 0 volts versus lithium. And eventually, at very high state of charge, the positive electrode becomes so positive that it crosses the threshold at which a conventional electrolyte starts to degrade very slowly, but it does add up. So when you get your laptops that are treated as desktops, they're just force-fed like a foie gras goose, that's why their batteries die, despite the fact you've not actually cycled them.
Right.
That's just one example. But you do end up, for example, with repeated rapid charging and so on, or repeated kind of over discharge, you end up with expansion and contraction to the extent of some electrode materials more than others. And with that mechanical cracking, you end up with the cell gradually breaking itself apart. You lose the kind of electronic and ionic conductivity. So electronics, the electron's abilities to go around the external circuit and power the car. Ionic conductivity is the ability of the lithium to actually move between the two electrodes inside the cell. So you end up with a loss of active material. You get these little islands of lithium that just kind of drift off. And similarly, if you charge a lithium-ion battery too quickly or when it's too cold, or a combination of both, you end up with the lithium not pigeonholing itself into the graphite. It goes, well, I'm just going to queue on top of it, and I'm going to create these, it's not going to plate evenly, there's going to be these little branch-like growths called dendrites, which over time will puncture the separator, touch the other cell, metal contact, you end up with an internal short circuit. We don't have enough time to cover it all, but there's loads of different degradation mechanisms that can happen. That's why your battery management system in your car is such a complex piece of equipment with really clever algorithms that take what's a black box of the system and they're able to predict, some better than others, when these degradation mechanisms are happening and when they're not. And I think one of the most interesting ones is going to be the next generation of Volvos are going to be using the algorithm for breathed battery technologies, which is heavily based on real-world kind of extra instrumented cells that were developed by Dr. Tauschen Amachayev and Joe Fleming, who I worked with very closely back in the day to develop these kind of techniques. So they've been able to go, oh yeah, when the cell voltage is this and the temperature is that, then this is happening inside, and breathe's gone right, gone it. Okay, we can code this as an algorithm without having the super expensive instrumented cells. What does that mean? It means your next generation of Volvos with the exact same kind of kit, just a software update basically, will have a rapid charging time that's reduced by about 30% because they know when those degradation mechanisms are happening and what to do to maintain those.
Yeah, that is incredible. Yes.
Yeah, just to add to that quickly. So the question was what is degradation? And really to kind of summarize it quickly, what it is when you assemble a battery cell, you can imagine that one side called your cathode is stuffed with lithium. That gives you 100% capacity and the ability to drive however many miles you can when you first purchase your electric vehicle. Degradation is any process that happens in your cell, breakdown of materials, reaction with your electrolyte that traps that lithium where it is or makes it unable to be used from now on. So degradation is processes in your battery that stop you from accessing that lithium because that lithium is the thing that enables you to get your 250 miles, 300 miles. And as that becomes trapped, as it becomes inactive, that is the process of degradation effectively in various different mechanisms.
But I just want to quickly jump to, we'll come to you just very quickly on that topic. When you describe what's going on in the battery, and then I've seen footage, we haven't actually been to see a proper battery recycling plant yet, but we're going to soon. But that, you think, well, those materials must have all mashed up. But in fact, you can reclaim an enormous amount of them and use them again in another battery, which you sort of think, well, aren't they worn out?
Not at all. So the Greenland project at Universities of Birmingham and Leicester is one of the world's most important world-leading projects on battery recycling.
Right.
And they've actively said, give us your most mashed up cells.
Right.
Give us the pouch cells that have kind of swollen up a bit due to the amount of degradation, knowing that the electrical chemical community has spicy pillows. So give us your spicy pillows out of your mobile phones and things, and we will recycle these safely, and we'll recover the material without stripping it back to the bare elements. So we can actually cut out so many steps, recover this material, and then slap it into a brand new cell. And incredibly, because it's kind of broken itself up a bit, it's actually increased its surface area. That means the lithium ions can get in and out of it quicker. So actually, you get better performance out of those retractable cells than the cells that were made of when those cells were new. So it's kind of like twice cooked chips at Cash Republic made it better.
Spicy pillows and twice cooked chips. yes.
Yeah, it's to see with the new battery technology how much more simple is it going to be for, like, obviously the home battery can now go for like solar farms and wind farms and things like that, for expanding the storage of mass produced green energy. That's something that these are feels a lot more environmentally friendly, particularly sodium based on my feeling, and that's something you're really excited about.
Yeah, that's what keeps us going. It's a long journey and a lot of hours to take a new technology from the lab through to industry. And I mentioned India, which is where we put our first pilot systems, because that's where that challenge is so acute and in your face. I think I mentioned earlier, right? The fact that we're deploying a gigawatt of solar in India alongside a gigawatt of coal, the contrast is huge, right? And it's painful. And so bringing down the cost of energy storage, not just at the cells, but at the system as well, to a price point that does make energy storage economically viable in all these emerging solar markets around the world, that is really important. That's something we should do, because quite frankly, the CO2 emissions overseas are going to hit us just as bad as the ones we're going at home anyway. So absolutely, in stationary storage, that's the holy grail we're all chasing. Slightly different from the solid state holy grail that people are chasing for EVs, and that's a good example there where we are getting quite a bit of diversification on what do people want from the next generation of battery chemistries.
Very quickly as well, we'll be talking about batteries, but some really interesting energy storage technologies that are not conventional batteries at all. Looking at kind of large grid-scale storage, two of my favourites right now are to do with compressed air or cryogenic air. One of them is the bizarrely named Cheesecake Energy, and that actually uses old internal combustion engines from HGVs, but they'll never see a drop of fuel again. So diesel's compression combustion. So if you're taking what is basically a giant starter motor, spinning the engine, so you've got that, obviously those pistons pumping away, you can take the compressed air from that, store it in a shipping container, and then when you need electricity again, it releases that compressed air through the engine, which then powers that generator, which then gives you electricity back. Round trip efficiency, similar to pumped hydro, but deployable anywhere, very low level less cost of energy. And of course, you've reused something. It's incredibly ethical. I'm not trying to steal your market. It should not be considered a competition to batteries. It should be considered complementary. There's also cryogenic air from hydrogen power, similar idea, but even bigger scale.
Yeah.
It's all gas handling components, just big,
Have they got one at Birmingham University?
Manchester.
Was it Manchester?
Yeah.
Right.
But there's other technologies as well, which if people are going to be very fussy about particular chemistries or safety concerns, even though obviously Nina's so much better in terms of safety and so on, then that potentially will allow some energy storage to be deployed in locations previously wouldn't be possible. So yeah, there's lots of exciting tech on the horizon.
Yeah. Oh, another question. Great.
Okay. This perhaps is something similar, maybe covered by what we were talking about in solid state. But I was wondering if anybody's looking at how you sort of reverse engineer the LED, where you use a battery to kick an electron into a different state, and whether anybody's using that or thinking about that as ways of storing energy and holding that. I know it's difficult because it's a random process, but I wondered if there's anything in that.
Has anybody encountered that before? That's a new one on me.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not aware of that. I'll need to just dig into that, but that's a new one on me.
I want an LED battery. I'm not going to be happy till I get one. Thank you. No, that's great. Just very, because we have come up to the end of it. I just want to quickly cover the kind of materials availability, Rory. Is that I mean, just to sort of, in the general sense, for all the technologies we've been talking about, is there enough of that on the planet's surface? And then secondarily, how do we get it out in the least damaging way? I suppose those are the two big challenges we're facing.
Yeah, so just like you said at the start, there's a common theme you often hear people say there's not enough lithium, there's not enough raw materials, batteries simply can't answer the questions that we need them to. There is definitely enough lithium. The issue is getting it out of the ground. The issue is finding mines, developing mines. To put it in perspective, take a mine from first permitting through to producing serious quantities of material. Normally takes 5 years if you're incredibly lucky and everything goes perfectly. Normally much closer to 7 to 10 years of planning in advance for the sheer quantity and size of batteries that we're seeing is a huge issue on a global scale that needs to be addressed. That's just kind of addressing lithium with next generation materials, be it solid state batteries, be it silicon, be it sodium ion. These materials are available, there is enough in order to scale and produce these technologies, but the same issue arises. At the end of the day, these materials come from the ground. They need to be mined, or they need to be recycled, as we discussed earlier on. But to establish those industries is no simple task, and it requires forward thinking, it requires policy, it requires a whole range of people to come together, sit down and say, how do we build this industry? And really that's what needs to be solved, rather than we'd like a battery today, where are the materials? So yeah, that's what Benchmark do. We track those supply chains, we try and understand what are the barriers to building and establishing both technologies and raw material supply chains, and trying to get in front of people and kind of get those policy makers together, get those industry participants together and say, this is what we need to do to really make batteries a thing today and tomorrow.
Thank you. No, I mean, I think we're going to have to wind it up there, but it's been, I would love this to have been an hour-long session because we've barely scratched the surface. It's been absolutely amazing. Please do thank the panel, ladies and gentlemen.